Hi, my name is Sophie Peters. I'm a visual artist, but I'm also studying at University of Birmingham. My course involves looking at biology, but I'm also taking classes of politics, philosophy, and English. So it's a really diverse set of subjects that I get to work with. Currently, I'm looking at the neurology behind gender and sexuality and sexual preferences, and how that develops in the brain, how certain circuits and circuitry will form together to create one particular orientation or belief set, which is actually an incredibly difficult thing to study. So it's mostly focused on mice and Drosophila and other animals that are key for investigating different things that we can relate to humans afterwards. But I'm also looking at the same topics from a political perspective. So identity politics, queer theory and critical race theory and things like that. So I like being able to combine those two things together in one institution. So in University of Birmingham, I can think about the science of your thoughts, but also the applications of those and how gender manifests itself from two different perspectives, basically. And it's really fascinating that they have discovered certain circuits in the brain and certain cells that actually will influence the sexual preferences and ability to learn about the other gender just through a few different cells in certain animals. And so that is going to be really interesting to explore as a group as humans, to understand what this is. But also identity politics is a really interesting thing I'm looking at as well. It's the whole idea that we decide who we vote for, who we are, and what we want based on a huge power system, Foucauldian's power system, that exists in society anyway, and will influence us on a micro scale. So what you get up and what you put on, and the clothes you wear, and what you do in any situation is influenced by all the different factors that come up throughout your life, all the different political influences, and how that will impact each person, and how that leads to them voting a particular way or identifying a specific way. At the moment, people are identifying as one thing or another as a way of trying to escape from traditional binaries such as male, female, black, white, all these binaries that have been created by people and aren't necessarily representative of the reality. But the problem with further categorizing yourself into I'm like Hispanic, I'm non-binary, means that you're putting yourself in another group, and I'm interested in the differences and the problems with that. But at the same time, I think it's really positive and it's really powerful to be able to identify yourself and fight for rights. And then looking at it from a biological point of view, there's certain genetic codes that influence what gender you are, and also certain hormones which will affect the behaviors you elicit. So it's a really fascinating subject. And so when I paint about it, or when I create paintings or murals, I usually think about all these things, and then the context of all of that idea gets funneled into a painting or a piece, or even just like a piece of poetry or something, and that will all form together, and hopefully it comes across somewhat. Last year I worked in New Orleans, and I got the chance to create a mural which was of two women, so young girls, using the same skin tones for both of them, but one had a headdress on and one was Asian, and just creating these huge girls so that anyone who sees them can see that like young girls have a voice and they can be really powerful. And I think that's really I think that's really useful for people to be able to see that, and to see young Muslim women taking selfies with it just made me really happy, because how often do they get the chance to do that in the middle of America? There's no posters, there's no advertising that caters to them or even acknowledges their existence. And it's the same with queer people, it's the same with any minority, really. Especially if you go to the cinema, you just see the same thing, like a white man, a white woman just doing something white, or, not gay. And that is so old and so boring. And I think that's where art and science can come together to create something that's a bit interesting, a bit more realistic, a bit more representative of the real world and the world that's actually interesting, people that are creating things. So I'm interested in all of those things, and it's really hard to put it into visual media, particularly when I work in paint, because it's so limited. It's such a tactile instrument, but also so static. So you're creating one image, and to try and put any of those ideas into one piece is quite hard. A piece that I did recently that's done quite well, and is shortlisted for the Ashurst Emerging Artist Prize, is a piece about microplastics and about how plastics are all in our everyday lives. And the piece has all the research I did for my dissertation in it. So which plastics are most toxic, which ones degrade most toxically, which ones are better for you, almost. Which is actually a better way of looking at plastics problem, rather than, we get rid of straws. Actually, get rid of the toxic stuff that's going to leach out and destroy the ecosystem faster. Perhaps that would be a better way of looking at it. But it's a portrait of my friend. So it's a human piece as well. It's my mate who's a doctor, and he's brilliant, and he's Ghanaian, and he has all these different stories to tell me. Like as I was taking photos for the painting, he was telling me about his experience as being a doctor in Wolverhampton, and the abuse he experiences, but also the hilarity and the fun he has doing that. So all of those things are trying to get into it, and that's what I try and do in my day-to-day